If you're a strong student and SAT reading still feels inconsistent, here's why. Most students think SAT reading is about analysis. That belief alone costs them at least 100 points. Because the SAT is not testing what you think, it's testing exactly what's written. And today, in this video, I'm going to show you how to read SAT passages the way the test expects you to. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Laura Whitmore. I'm the founder of Strategic Test Prep. I have 20 years experience coaching the SATs, and I score 1590 on the test. Today, I want to teach you the most important strategy on the SAT English side of things, literal comprehension, or what I like to call the precision method. Just a quick note before we dive in, I just updated our SAT English workbook for 2026 with this specific lesson included, and we are giving it away for free. So if you want to grab our SAT workbook, I will link up here. Just subscribe to our email list and we will send you a copy. All right, guys, literal comprehension means one thing, and that's staying anchored to the words on the page. What this means is on the SAT, the answer choice you select must be directly supported with textual evidence right in the passage. What this means is you need to trust what the text says, do not add assumptions, do not exaggerate, and most importantly, do not try to fill in the gaps. Here's the SAT rule I want you to remember. If it's not explicitly said in the text, it's not the right answer. And this is where students often struggle because in English class, we're used to thinking critically when we read, not literally. Quick question before we continue. On the SAT reading, do you feel like you overthink it or do you feel like you rush it? Comment below and let me know. I'd love to compare and see what happens more often with you guys. Okay, so before you guys ever look at the answer choices, your job is to understand exactly what the passage is saying and try to anticipate the answer before you look at the choices. So what I want you to do is read the passage one time really well for accuracy from start to finish. This may sound like it's going to take more time for you to do, but it actually ends up saving you time in the end because you're not rereading the same thing 2 or 3 times. Now, after you're done reading, if you can't summarize the passage in 1 to 2 sentences, you're cooked. You don't even know what you just read. So as you're reading, I want you to think about what is this passage about? What's the argument? How are these sentences connected? Try to read actively and stick to the exact words on the page. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is read this passage out loud with you from start to finish. So we have Elizabeth A. has identified a negative correlation between the share of developing countries' economies derived from natural resource extraction and those countries' receipts of foreign investment. This may appear counterintuitive. Resource extraction requires initial investments in extractive technology, for instance, at scales best met by multinational corporations. But A notes that natural resource industries' boom-bust cycle can destabilize local currencies and increase developing countries' vulnerability to external shocks, creating levels of uncertainty to which foreign investors are typically averse. Okay, what I want you to do right now is pause the video and think about what this passage is about and summarize it in 1 to 2 sentences in your own words. By the way, if reading feels harder for you than math, I want you to know that that's super normal. When I was in high school, I actually scored a 780 on the SAT in math and a 640 in English. I really struggled on the reading. I feel like I would read a passage and then have no idea what I just read. So I just want you to know if you feel that way, you're not alone. And this is why I'm actually so methodical about teaching the reading now. Okay, chances are your summary is on the right track. I wish you could just send me what your thoughts are via telepathy, but unfortunately that's not possible in this video. But what I can tell you is most students are 75 to 80% there, and it comes down to precision. Of course, we have strategies where you can cut corners, like reading the last sentence strategy, etc. But if you really want to get as high of a score as possible, you want to read for precision and accuracy. And so here's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to take it one sentence at a time, line by line, and break it down. Okay, I'm going to start with the first sentence. It says Elizabeth A. has identified a negative correlation between the share of developing countries' economies derived from natural resource extraction and those countries' receipts of foreign investment. Okay, here's one thing I want you guys to know about SAT passages. When you read, I want you to think about the organization of the passage and how it's structured. So there's a cookie cutter formula that occurs on most of the SAT reading passages. And it's basically the first sentence is an intro to the topic. The second sentence is an old idea or an old belief about the topic. The third sentence is a new discovery or a new finding or a new belief about the topic. And then there may be a fourth sentence in there that gives you the claim, or that third sentence that's a new belief gives you the claim and the argument. That's what I want you to look for. So when I read this first sentence, I get that they're talking about developing countries and taking natural resources out of the ground. But the word that really stands out to me is negative correlation. And I want you to pay attention to correlations when you read, especially on science passages. So I need to make sense of this. So if she identified a negative correlation, that means if the natural resource extraction goes up, the receipts of foreign investment go down. Okay. This isn't a theory, it's been identified. So that means it's more factual or there's data to back it up. That's something really important too. So I understand that first sentence now. I'm going to move to the next sentence. We have this may appear counterintuitive. Ooh, okay. So another thing I want you to look for as you read are adverbs of degree, like words like likely, significantly, partly, commensurately. The word here that tells me the degree of it is may. They said this may appear counterintuitive. That doesn't mean it is, but it could be. So, why is it counterintuitive? Well, when I look at the structure, we've got these dashes. So, they're going to explain in between the dashes why it is counterintuitive or why it could be. So, we have resource extraction requires initial investments in extractive technology, for instance, at scales best met by multinational corporations. Okay, well, what does that mean? Let me try to break that down into my own words. If they want to take natural resources out of the ground, it requires a lot of money up front in large quantities, best met by big companies. Okay, do you see how I took what they just said and I broke it down into simpler language? Okay. I can see why that's counterintuitive as well, because they need, it sounds like for natural extraction, they need a lot of foreign investment. But the first sentence said that foreign investment goes down when the extraction goes up. So that's definitely going against the first sentence. So another thing I want you to think about as you're reading are connections. Like, how is the first sentence connected to the second sentence? And they contrast each other, right? Because we found a negative correlation between foreign investments and natural resource extraction. And then they told us why that's counterintuitive, because they actually need investments to get it out of the ground. I'm going to move on. Now, here's another thing. As I go on to read, I see a but. Okay. So, what this tells me is it's going to contrast what I just read, the counterintuitive part, and it's going to tell me why it actually makes sense. Okay, so it's going to loop back and maybe agree with the first sentence or support the first sentence why that negative correlation happens. So I want to find out, why does that negative correlation happen if they actually need more investments? So we have A notes that natural resource industries boom bust cycle can destabilize local currencies. Okay, I'm going to stop there and process that. Sometimes if a sentence is long, you might want to stop in chunks. You might want to stop in chunks and just process a little bit at a time. So let me put that into simpler words. So, but A notes that, okay, let's talk about, well, what does a boom bust cycle mean? Okay. If it booms, it's doing really well. If it busts, it's doing really poorly. So A notes that, what we could say, the natural resource industry's highs and lows in its cycle can throw off local currencies and or make unstable the currency. And we have increased developing countries' vulnerability to external shocks. So I would just say, and make countries more vulnerable to external forces, creating levels of uncertainty to which foreign investors are typically averse. What would that, how could I reword that? Well, it would make it would make everything uncertain, so foreign investors aren't really sure if they wanna invest, okay? So, that totally makes sense to me. So, because there's a boom bust cycle, because natural resource does really, really well sometimes or really, really poorly sometimes, it makes it unstable, so it throws off the local currencies, they're unstable. And so foreign investors don't want to invest, basically, right? Do you see how I stuck to what the text is saying? I didn't change the words, like I didn't change the meaning. So what I see students do sometimes, they'll read it and they'll say they'll just change things up. They'll say like I'm trying to think of like how I could word this like a student. So they might say but A notes that natural resource extraction destabilizes the currencies, which basically makes developing countries get shocked. And so there's more problems. And then it creates high levels of uncertainty um, for foreign investors. Do you see how I changed that a lot? Like, it made it sound like foreign investors are still investing. Instead of saying can destabilize, I made it sound like, okay, it's definitely doing this. Stick to each word on the page. So you're reading it word for word. Every word is important. A word like can or a word like may can drastically change the meaning of something. So you are like a lawyer reading the Constitution, line by line, word by word. What does this law say? What does this law mean? That's what you're doing on the SAT, literal comprehension. What does this sentence say exactly? Not what do I think it says? What could this mean? Let me throw in and sprinkle in my own words along the way. You want to avoid doing that. All right. I think I have a good sense though now that I basically translated it into my own words and read it line by line to start going through the answer choices. But before I do, I'm going to just take a step back and answer the question myself. What is the main idea of the text? So I would say, in my own words, the main idea is there's a negative correlation between foreign investment and natural resource extraction. So if extraction goes up, foreign investment goes down. And that's because in natural resource extraction, there's a cycle that's either really good or really bad. So a boom bust cycle that can make currencies unstable. So it scares foreign investors away. They may not want to invest. Okay, let's go through the answers. We're going to look at them one at a time and we're going to read them precisely and try to figure out something wrong with each one. Okay, so I just have answer choice A up right now. Let's take a look at that. We have, although it may seem surprising that foreign investment declines in developing countries as natural resource extraction makes up a larger share of those countries' economies. Okay, I'm going to start with just that part. Like, is that true? Okay, well, it may seem surprising. Yes, because they said it may appear counterintuitive. So that is word for word a match in the text. Foreign investment declines as natural resource extraction makes up a larger share. So as resource extraction goes up, that's absolutely right because they did say that that negative correlation was surprising. So this whole first part is right up to the comma. Okay, but here's one thing I know about SAT reading. They design a lot of question or answers that way. They're called half right, all wrong. So I need to make sure to read the second part after the comma and check to see if that part is right too. If it is and it's airtight, then we can pick it, but there might be something wrong after. So we have that decline happens because resource extraction requires initial investments too large for foreign investors to supply. Okay. They do talk about it requiring initial investments. That's in the middle line that I have highlighted yellow up here. So let me go ahead and circle that. Now it says at scales best met by multinational corporations. So it means, okay, they require initial investments that big companies usually provide or need to provide. It doesn't say it's too large. It just says we need to have multinational or usually multinational corporations will do it. But nowhere in the text does it say it requires initial investments too large. So that's the problem. Notice how it's kind of like an adverb of degree. It's talking about the degree of it. Like too large is not correct. So that one little phrase makes that whole answer choice wrong. All right, now we're going to go to answer choice B. All right, we have answer choice B. Although developing countries tend to become less dependent on foreign investment as natural resource industries make up a larger share of their economies, I'm going to stop right there because I already know that's wrong. They said that it requires initial investments. So nowhere in the text does it say that they're less dependent on foreign investment as they do more extraction. The text actually says they need foreign investment to do extraction. So I'm going to get rid of B before I even read the rest because the first half of it is definitely wrong and that makes the whole answer choice wrong anyways. All right, now let's read C. Although one might expect that foreign investment would increase as natural resource extraction makes up a larger share of developing countries' economies, well, yeah, that is what we would expect because they basically said that the negative correlation where one goes up and the other goes down is counterintuitive. So what that implies is we would expect one to go up and the other to go up. So I'm good with the first part of that. And then we have the opposite happens because that's true. The opposite does happen because heavy reliance on natural resources can lead to unattractive conditions for investors. Okay. Now, what's cool is this part I just highlighted pink is directly in the text. And this goes back to I just want you guys to be aware of the structure of the passage because oftentimes College Board will put the claim in the very last sentence at the end. So, lead to unattractive conditions for investors is the same thing as this part, creating levels of uncertainty to which foreign investors are typically averse. The levels of uncertainty are the unattractive conditions for the foreign investors. So, that's a perfect match. I can't find anything wrong with C. It's said in the text. It's said exactly this, just in a different way, but it's saying the same exact thing. So I would, because of time, pick C and move on and flag it to check D with my extra time later. So you might be thinking, wow, this feels really like an investment of my time. I don't know if I would have enough time to read this closely. And I understand where you're coming from because time is really tight on module 2. But again, if you read it well one time, you don't have to read it again. So the trap students fall into is reading the same passage over and over, the same sentence over and over, or going through the answer choices 2 or 3 times. But take each sentence, break it down, put it into words that are simpler. Don't change the meaning, stick word for what the text is saying. And you should be good to read just one time everything. So another thing I'll say is you have to make sure that you've got your grammar rules down, your transitions down. You need to get all those things down, because if you can do those questions really quickly, you should have plenty of time for the reading passages where precision and accuracy really matters, and you're going to need a little bit more time. We're just going to take a look at D to see what's wrong with it. So we have, although foreign investors tend to avoid initial investments, and okay, I already know that that's wrong because nowhere in the text did it say that they tend to avoid initial investments. So I read that and I'm like, not said in the text, and I'm just going to cross that off, and I feel really confident picking C. If this breakdown was helpful for you today, go ahead, show me some love, hit the like button below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel because I come out with free videos every single week to help you master the SAT. Comment below if you actually want me to make a full video on SAT reading trap answers, because it's super valuable to know what kind of wrong answers you could encounter. Okay, so to recap, here are some tips to make literal comprehension, aka the precision method, work really well for you. Tip number 1, read each sentence one at a time closely, translating into simpler language. Number 2, know the common SAT reading passage structure. Intro, common belief, correction. Okay, so in other words, old belief, new belief, which usually ends up being the claim. Tip number 3, pay attention to adverbs of degree like partly, largely, commensurately, significantly, may, can, will. Look for those words. Tip number 4, look for transition words that shift the belief or the tone. For instance, at the very end of the passage we worked on, there was a but, and I knew that they were going to go back to explain why it's actually not counterintuitive. Tip number 5, make sure you know exactly what the author is arguing. That's the claim, and it's usually towards the end of the passage. Tip number 6, only pick an answer that is said in the text, okay? Don't make any inferences. You're only going to make an inference on an inference question, which is called a logically completes the text. Now, I know I shared with you guys earlier that I scored a 640 on English in high school, but these strategies and methods I teach you today, like the one in this video, I used myself to get a 1590. So it is entirely possible to go from a 640 to a 790 or a perfect score in English. Now, just a heads up, if you want help applying this strategy or learning other strategies, we have tutoring and strategic test prep. So we offer one-on-one tutoring, small group classes, and we have upcoming events like crash courses with me. So you can head to our events page. I'll link it up here. Go check out what we've got going on. All right, guys, hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Happy prepping.